Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So right now, last lesson we talked about the Ashir, and we talked about this guy who stands at the borders of the Muslims, and anyone who passes by has to give the tax, or not a tax, it's based upon zakat. So therefore, whether it's a Muslim, or whether it's a dhimmi, or whether it's a harbi, each one of them has to pay something, right? So depending on how much they have. And this is all based upon the lunar system. And we even talked about what if a non-Muslim came across the border and he had alcohol with him, or he had pig with him, swine, then what? And we said there's also zakat, not zakat, the ushur has to be taken from him as well. And then we talked about the ikhtilaf of whether this applies to pigs as well, even though pigs are something which, we're not allowed to deal with them. We said even the Imam Abu Yusuf rahimahullah says that if they're together, then you give it. And there's also a report that says that you actually take it from the pigs, but the value of the pigs. Anyway, so let's go now to the next masala now. He says, وَلَوْ مَرَّ صَبِيٌّ أَوْ امْرَأَةٌ مِّن بَنِي تَغْلِبٍ. So if a child, a minor, or a woman from the tribe of Bani Taghlib. So the tribe of Banu Taghlib is a tribe that was well known in the time of Umar radiallahu anhu. These were non-Muslims, and they refused to give zakat to, or not zakat, they refused to give jizya to Umar radiallahu anhu. And so what happened was Umar radiallahu anhu said, whatever happens, I'm going to take jizya off you. And they said, okay, don't call it jizya, and double it if you want. So this was known as a specific jizya that will apply to Bani Taghlib. Now, do Bani Taghlib exist today or not? It seems, from what I understand, Bani Taghlib don't exist anymore. Right? This was only in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and then Umar radiallahu anhu. So he says, as for the child or the woman from the tribe of Bani Taghlib, right? What about them? And what if they have mal with them? So let's say a 10-year-old boy, or let's say a woman crosses and they belong to the tribe of Bani Taghlib, the non-Muslims. فَلَيْسَ عَلَى الصَّبِيِّ شَيْءٌ. There's nothing at all upon the sabi. The sabi, the minor, the 10-year-old boy, doesn't have to give a penny. And the reason for that, like it's going to come, is because they are considered to be غير mukallaf, they're minors, and just like they wouldn't have to give zakat if they were Muslims, then they don't have to give this. وَعَلَى الْمَرْأَةِ مَا عَلَى الرَّجُلِ. However, a woman has to give the ushur. She'd have to give it. And this is because when we're talking about this concept of the ashir and the ushur in this concept, we're looking at whether they would qualify for zakat or not. So if they were Muslims, would they qualify to give zakat? So if they qualify to give zakat, and therefore a minor does not qualify to give zakat, and a woman does not qualify, a woman qualifies to give zakat if she has obviously all the conditions, then likewise in this case, if a woman passes by, she has to give it. This is not based upon jizya. In jizya, a woman does not give jizya and a minor does not give jizya. And the reason being is because jizya is only upon the men who have the capability of fighting, right? So it's like a way of them giving the government this tax of jizya. And there's three types of jizya that's given. You have the low rate jizya, which is 12, and then you have the 24, the medium, and then you have the 48. Right? So you have 3 levels of jizya, depending on how wealthy a person is. And this is once a year. Once a year you have to give that, that's it. Right? So it's 12 gold coins, 24 gold coins if you're average wealth, and if you're very rich, then you give 48 a year, that's all. Woman doesn't have to give it, mine doesn't have to. This is why it says, لِمَا ذَكَرْنَا فِي السَّوَائِمِ. Yeah, because of what we mentioned when it came to the section of sawa'im. Yeah, so in the section of sawa'im, we talked about animals, when animals pass by, right? If a person has animals with them, how does he work out so we said this is based upon the concept of himaya. Himaya meaning that when you cross the border, it's like you're paying this money for protection. Your mal that you're coming with is going to be protected. Yeah, and we said al-jibaya bil-himaya. Jibaya means the taking of the taxes is going to be equated to how much protection they can give you. So therefore that protection is because of the money you've given them. Okay, anyway. So next masla, وَمَنْ مَرَّ عَلَى عَاشِرٍ بِمِئَةِ دِرْهَمٍ. Whoever passes by an ashir and has 100 silver coins with him. 100 silver coins is less than the nisab, right? Because the nisab is 200 silver coins for zakat. So whoever passes by an ashir, whether they be Muslim, dhimmi, ahl harb, man, whatever, woman, وأخبره أن له في منزله مئة أخرى. So let's say for example I'm the border guard, the ashir, and let's say for example Zafar comes to me and Zafar has 100 silver coins, and Zafar says to me, at home I've also got another 100 silver coins as well, and 1 year has passed, so he ticks off all the boxes. So 100 here, 100 at home. If you add it together, it all makes up 200, right? So all together it's going to make up 200, but on its own, 100 here and 100 there, it's not considered to be obviously the amount that he has. So what is he going to do? Am I going to tell Zafar that, look, because you've got 100 here and 100 at home, you have to give zakat? Because normally in zakat, that's how it works. So whether you have your zakat in one place or you have it distributed in multiple places, you have to give your zakat. So he says, if this person, so man marra ala ashirin, so if a person passes by an ashir, I'm the ashir, someone, Zafar comes in, passes by the border, and he says he has 100 dirhams, wa akhbarahu, and Zafar also told me, anna lahu fi manzilihi, that he has in his home mi'atan ukhra, he has another 100, qad hala alayha al-hawlu, and a year has passed by, lam yuzakki allati marra biha. So I would not make him give zakat. So he would not basically give zakat. Zafar would not give zakat. In this case, it's not technically zakat, but he would not give the ushar or the ashir the money for that amount. Right? He doesn't have to combine them together. Now, why is this for? He says because لِقِلَّتِهَا, because the amount that he's got is 100 and 100 is less than 200. So therefore, he doesn't have to give the nisab. وَمَا فِي بَيْتِهِ, and as for the 100 he has at home, لم يدخل تحت حمايته, that 100 has not come under the protection of me. Like I only guarantee protection for what the person that's coming to the checkpoint. So whoever enters into the Muslim lands and has this money with them, I only guarantee that money for that amount that he's got. And because the amount that he's got is less than 100, less than 200, therefore he doesn't have to give zakat on that. And whatever he has at home, I'm not responsible for that. So if that gets stolen or something happens to that, I'm not responsible for that. So that's why he's saying this. وَمَا فِي بَيْتِهِ لَمْ يَدْخُلْ تَحْتَ حِمَايَتِهِ, حِماية, protection of me. It doesn't fall under the protection of me. Okay. وَلَوْ مَرَّ بِمِئَتَيْ دِرْهَمٍ, and if he was to pass, so if he was to pass by, meaning if Zafar was to come by him and he had 200 dirhams, but he claimed these 200 dirhams were there for business purposes. Like I took this from investors. Investors gave this money to me, and I'm going to go and do business with it. Right? So I'm going to invest this. So in other words, the money is not mine. It's like I'm almost, you can imagine me to be like an employee. I'm an employee. I've got employers, and they've given me this money. So this money actually belongs to my employers. Okay, so it doesn't belong to me. So if Zafar was to pass by with 200 silver coins, so that's, he's got the nisab, but this is bida'atan. Yeah. So bida'atan is considered to be like, investment, right? Investment, mal of investment, wealth of investment, capital. Lam yu'ashirha. So I will not take ushur from that. Why is this for? لأنه غير مأذون بأداء زكاته. Because if I'm working for someone and they've given me money, that money is almost like, you can say, I'm only permitted to buy and sell with this money. I am not permitted to give charity with this money. Right? So if someone gives you money and you're a wakil, yeah, let's say for example, I say to Shayma, go and buy me some coffee. Here's the money to buy me coffee. And I give her that money. She goes to buy coffee. Now, when she goes to buy that coffee, she's only permitted to buy coffee for me. She can't use that money to buy anything else. And if she does, legally, I won't have to pay for that. But if I give her money and I say to her, I want you to take this money and I want you to buy some things with it, sell it, and bring me the profit. Right? So this now has become like the power that I gave her is extended now. It's not just for buying, it's also for selling as well. So in this case, the same thing has happened over here. مر ب200 درهم بضاعة لم يعشرها لأنه غير مأذون, because Zafar has not been given permission. He hasn't been permitted to بأداء زكاته, to give it zakat. Right? He has no right to do that, and therefore that comes under the ruling of wakala. Right. So in the chapter of wakala, inshallah, if we have life, we're going to get there. Inshallah, we'll talk about in wakala what are the rules of wakala. How much power does a wakil have to use that money? Right, so what can he do with it? قال وكذا المضاربة, and likewise the same rule goes for mudaraba as well. So bada'atan is basically like some money you give someone to invest it, and there's also something very similar to bada'a, which is mudaraba. Yeah, so you've got these two things over here. So mudaraba is what we call a silent partnership. So silent partnership is, let's say for example, like I'm an investor and I want someone who's got a very good skill in a certain field. I want them to invest this money in a certain field, like buying and selling mobile phones, or buying and selling books, or buying and selling houses, property. So this is called mudaraba. I'm the silent partner, and he is considered to be the person I've done mudaraba with, the mudarib. This person is known as the worker. Yeah, he's like the employee. So وَكَذَا الْمُضَارَبَةِ, and the same ruling goes for mudaraba as well. Yeah, so but the difference between obviously buda'a is that in mudaraba there's a concept of shirka taking place. There's like this partnership, whereas in buda'a there isn't necessarily a partnership. That is simply employee working for an employer. You can almost say like a ajir, right? So someone, like I gave money to Shayma to go and buy some coffee. You can almost understand it as a simple transaction, or extend it to buying and selling. That's simply just being a ajir, right? So an ajir does that. Likewise, if someone works in a supermarket and they're working at the counter and they're making the money deals exchange, again that's almost like a wakil as well, because the person at the cashier sitting at the counter does not have the power to be able to do anything else with that money. They can't take money at the counter and give it to someone as a gift, right? They don't have the power to do that. So كذا المضاربة يعني إذا مر المضارب به. So I'm the border control, right? I'm the Ashir. Zafar comes. Zafar is a mudarib. Yeah. So he comes al Ashir. Yeah, the mudarib comes to the Ashir, and I find that he has 200 silver coins, and I ask him whose do this belong to, and he says they don't belong to me. They belong to the investor, right? The what you call Rabbul Mal. They call him the Rabbul Mal, right? And this is the Ra'sul Mal. So none of this belongs to me. So this is the same ruling applies. وكان أبو حنيفة. However, Imam Sahib al-Hidayah says كان أبو حنيفة. Imam Hanifa has two opinions on this. This is one of them, and he also used to have an old opinion. وكان أبو حنيفة رحمه الله يقول, he would say, أولا, firstly, initially, يعشرها, that the Ashir, the border control, has to take the ushur from him, even if Zafar is claiming to be a mudarib. Right? I'm still going to take it off him. Why is this for? لقوة حق المضارب, because the mudarib has this special power that he's been given. So because of this special power that he's been given, it's almost as though Zafar has the power, the same power that I have. He can buy, he can sell, he can, loan money out, etc. So he says لقوة حق المضارب, because the haqq of the mudarib in a contract of mudaraba is so strong, حتى لا يملك رب المال, so much so, this is how much power the mudarib has. So it's not like buda'a, it's not like employment. This is different. So much so, لا يملك رب المال, so much so that the investor, so the guy that's given Zafar the money to invest, the silent partner does not possess the power to stop him عن التصرف, to dealing with that money. بعدما صار أرودا, after that invested money has now been converted into goods. So I'll give you an example. So let's say, for example, on Monday, the silent partner gave Zafar £1,000. And he says to him, right, I want you to go and I want you to buy and sell mobile phones. This is the business I want you to do. And then the profit, we're going to split the profit 50-50. So that £1,000 is called Ra'sul Mal. And what happens now is that Ra'sul Mal is then given to Zafar on Monday. And then on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, Friday, he starts to invest in it. And by Friday, all the money has now been converted into goods now. He's basically bought with that money mobile phones. So by Friday, nothing of that money that he was given is left. It's all now in the form of mobile phones. Yeah, so because it's all in the form of mobile phones, it's called urud now. So he says now, Zafar does not have the power to be able to, the silent partner does not have the power to be able to tell Zafar not to further now after Friday. He can't tell Zafar after Friday to go and further deal with this now. He can't tell him what to do with this. He can't. He could have told him before Friday when he still had some cash. But from after Friday, he can't tell him now because all the money has now been converted into goods. Is it because both of them profit? Yes, they both profit. But Abu Hanifa rahimahullah is saying that because the mudarib has been given such power, the power is so strong, it's like almost you can imagine that the mudarib is considered to be the malik of that because he has so much power, he can do whatever he wants from Friday now. From Friday onwards, he can do whatever he wants as long as he brings back profit to the silent partners. So he says, let me say it again. So he says, hatta, so much so, la yamliku rabbul mal, so much so that the silent partners, they do not possess the power to prohibit him, to prohibit Zafar, and it-tasarruf, from further dealing fihi, in the goods that he has, ba'dama sara urudan, after the money has now been converted into goods. Right? فَنَزَلَ, so therefore, Zafar has now become manzilat al-malik, almost in the status of an owner. He's not the owner, but he's almost become like the owner here. So that's why he's in Abu Hanifa rahimahullah's this opinion over here. It seems as though Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, I mean, we don't know exactly the dalil that Abu Hanifa uses, right? So this is assumed this is his dalil. And if it is his dalil, it kind of makes sense as well, because what's the whole point of the Ashir? If I'm the Ashir, I'm the border control. I'm going to protect people's wealth. I'm going to guarantee people that your mal is protected. So therefore, if someone comes to the checkpoint to me and says to me, look, this is mal, I'm a mudarib, I'm a, this this worker of a silent partnership, and the mal that I've got, this belongs to my silent partner, but I'm the mudarib. So then I would say, right, give me the money from there, give me 2.5% of that. Right? Why? Because I'm going to say to the mudarib, you are acting like a malik. The powers that have been given to you mean that you have the power to almost do whatever you want with that money. Yeah? But this is only, like we said, this is only after Friday. ثم رجع إلى ما ذكرنا في الكتاب. And then Imam Abu Hanifa, he retracted his position. So رجع, he retracted. So that was his initial view that he held. And then he retracted this view إلى ما ذكرنا في الكتاب, to that which has been mentioned in the text. The book means the text, the Jami' al-Saghir text. So this text is in Jami' al-Saghir. So Jami' al-Saghir text says this, right? So whether it's buda'atan or whether it's mudarabatan, both of these cases, the Ashir will not take a penny from them. وَهُوَ قَوْلُهُمَا, and this is their position on this. So Sahibain's view has always been that, whether it's mudaraba, whether it's buda'a, the Ashir has no right in taking a penny from them. Okay, why is this? لأنه, because in this case Zafar, the mudarib, ليس بمالك, he's not an owner. He may replicate all the characteristics of an owner, but he is not the real owner of the money. ولا نائب عنه, and nor is he considered to be a naib, someone who is a representative of the owner in regards to zakat. But he is a naib with regards to tijara. That's all he is. In other words, the mudarib's powers, he's there, the power is there, but the power only manifests when it comes to buying and selling. That's all. If he was the true owner, he would have been allowed to do whatever he wanted to do with the money. So buying and selling, gifting to people, giving in charity, buying himself stuff, he would have had that power. But we know he doesn't have that power in mudaraba. So this is why it says, وَهُوَ قَوْلُهُمَا لِأَنَّهُ لَيْسَ بِمَالِكٍ, because he's not really a malik, the owner of the wealth, nor is he a representative of the wealth when it comes to ada of zakat, right? Because that's the job of the original owner. إِلَّا أَن يَكُونَ فِي الْمَالِ رِبْحٌ. There is one scenario where the Ashir can actually take from him, right? So there's actually one scenario where the Ashir can take, and this is the case where he says that the mal contains ribh. إِلَّا أَن يَكُونَ فِي الْمَالِ رِبْحٌ, that there is profit that's been made. So that £1,000 investment that was initially given to Zafar, that £1,000 has now been invested. He's bought mobile phones and he's sold them, and now he's made a profit. So he's got the £1,000 capital left, and on top of that, he's also got profit. So let's say, for example, he's made £1,500. So that means 1,000 of that is the capital, which belongs to the silent partners, and £500 is the profit. And because they decided 50-50 split, so therefore £250 will belong to the silent owners and £250 will belong to him. So he says إِلَّا أَن يَكُونَ فِي الْمَالِ رِبْحٌ, unless in the mal there is ribh. Unless in the mal there is some ribh in there. يَبْلُغُ نِصَابَهُ, which the ribh reaches the level of nisab, i.e. it reaches 200 silver coins. Nisaban. So let's say it was 1,500 silver coins. 1,000 silver coins is investment, and then the £500 silver coins on top, split it in two. So therefore £250 is more than 250 silver coins is more than 200 silver coins. فَيُؤْخَذْ مِنْهُ, in that case the ushur can be taken from that. لِأَنَّهُ مَالِكٌ لَهُ, because legally he is the malik of that amount. So in other words, the amount that is within his own ownership, which is £250, the rest of the, how much is it, £1,250, that belongs to the silent partners, and then the £250 belongs to him. So therefore he is going to be considered to be the owner of that, and therefore that makes him liable to give the ushur on this. So he's saying that's the only case that we look at. So this is why, for example, like, how would we deal with this kind of situation in modern days? Like, for example, let's say there's someone who is simply just carrying money for someone. Like you find these security money transfer organizations that go around carrying money, to a shop or to a post office or to a bank. So let's say there's someone that is simply just carrying money. Again, they will also be treated similarly as well. In other words, that money doesn't belong to them. It belongs to clearly someone else. They have no right in investing any of this money. That's one example. Another example could be someone who is in debt. We talked about this before. So if someone is in debt and they come to me, I'm the border control, and I check and I say to them, look, what does this money fall under? And they say it falls under debt that I owe someone. Then I won't take a penny from that, right? Because that's something which obviously there's no zakat in. And likewise, when it comes to other sort of like deals in today's times as well. For example, credit deals. Let's say someone has paid for someone else through a credit card. The credit card company technically is like hawala, right? So it's like they've paid and they're going to get their money from you. So possibly that can also be seen in one way like that as well. So this is how we have to try and extend this masla to other scenarios as well. Now, in some of the books, they've actually mentioned different arguments they've mentioned for sahibain on this. Some of them have said, وَهُوَ قَوْلُهُمَا, they've mentioned this, but some have mentioned others. One second, let me just... Let me see if I can find a way to put that note. Okay, so okay, here I'll just put it up on there so you guys can see this. Okay, I'll just show you here. See if it comes up. Okay, so if you guys look at this, then this is Kitab al-Asl. Okay, so this is the Asl, Kitab al-Asl. So if you have a look at this, I've just done a quick search for Mudaraba and Ashir. Okay, here is. وَإِذَا دَفَعَ الرَّجُلُ إِلَى رَجُلِ مَالًا. So when a man gives another person mal, so in this case, silent partner gives Zafar mal, مُضَارَبَةً فَسَافَرَ بِالْمَالِ. So Zafar has gone on a trip with the mal, فَمَرَّ عَلَى الْعَاشِرِ. And now he passes by an Ashir, like I'm the Ashir in this case. فَأَرَادَ أَن يُعَشِّرَهُ. And I intended to take the share. فأخبره أنه مضاربة. So Zafar mentioned that this is مضاربة. وحلف له على ذلك, and Zafar even swore an oath that this mal is مضاربة. فإنه ينبغي للعاشر. Then it's important for the Ashir أن يصدقه, to believe him, ولا يعشره. فإن عشره العاشر. If the border control, the Ashir, was to take ushur from him, كان العاشر هو الذي أخذ ذلك. Then the Ashir is going to be the one that has taken that. فَلَا ضَمَانَ عَلى الْمُضَارِبِ. Then the Mudarib, Zafar, when he goes back to his silent partners and says, look, I took the mal, and at the borders I told them that this was Mudarib, they still took the money, he won't be legally responsible for compensation. Like the silent partners cannot make him give the money from his own pocket. So he says, لا ضمان على المضارب فيما أخذه العاشر. However, وإن كان المضارب هو الذي أعطى العاشر. However, if the Mudarib was the one who gave the Ashir willfully, voluntarily, بلا إكراه من العاشر, فهو ضامن. Then Zafar is going to be legally responsible for compensation. لما أعطى العاشر من ذلك. Of what he gave the Ashir, because he wasn't meant to give it. وكذلك إن أراد العاشر أن يأخذ من المضارب العشر فصانعه المضارب بشيء من المال. Okay, then it goes on like other scenarios for that. But the point is, this is Imam Muhammad's Asl. Okay, this is like the original book that a lot of the masail that we discuss come from. Right, so first of all, we look at that, and then if we go to Badai Sanai, كذا الجواب فيه مرة على عاشر بالسوائم. Okay, here. Yeah, so this is the masala that we mentioned here. Badai Sanai hasn't really gone into detail about this. He just says, وَلَوْ قَالَ هُوَ إِنْدِي مُضَارَبَةً. If Zafar was to say that this mal is mudaraba with me, فَالْقَوْلُ قَوْلُهُ. Then his statement will be taken with an oath. وَهَلْ يَعْشُرُهُ. كان أبو حنيفة أولا يقول يعشره. Abu Hanifa used to say that ushur should be taken from him. ثم رجع, and then he retracted this position. وقال لا يعشره وهو قول أبي يوسف ومحمد. This is Abu Yusuf and Muhammad's position on this. Okay. Okay, let's check. Okay, where else was it? Here. Trying to find where Sahibain's view. Okay, this is Binaya. So Binaya is a very easy to read commentary. It's not difficult. Okay. فنزل منزلة المضارب ليس بمالك إلا أن يكون أولا. Okay, anyway, so you can have a look at that yourselves and you can see what you can find there, inshallah. So let's go back to this. So the point is that the Ashir can only take off someone whose mal it is considered to be their mal. Right? They are considered to be the legal maliks of that mal. Okay, next masala. وَلَوْ مَرَّ عَبْدٌ. Okay. وَلَوْ مَرَّ عَبْدٌ مَأْذُونٌ. So next, if a slave, ma'dhoon slave, right? If a ma'dhun slave was to pass by. So وَلَوْ مَرَّ عَبْدٌ مَأْذُونٌ. So a slave is of two types. So you have a slave that has no power at all to do any sort of transaction, right? So this is called a normal slave. Yeah, so a normal slave is someone who has no power to do any sort of transaction. And then you have a second type of slave who is a ma'dhun slave. A ma'dhun slave is basically, let's say, for example, I'm the owner and I have a slave. We call him Zaid. I tell Zaid to go to the city and do business there. Maybe he gets a job somewhere, working as a taxi driver, or even working in a company, or even starts his own business, whatever it is. He now is earning now. Ma'dhun slaves have certain special rules that other people don't have. And that is, the ma'dhun does not own anything like a normal slave, but I, the Malik, I do not own anything that the ma'dhun slave owns. Yeah. So the ma'dhun's investment, whatever he has, it's technically kind of like no one's really an owner of it. It's like in mid-air. And so in this situation, if the ma'dhun was to incur debts, right? If the ma'dhun was to incur debts, what's going to happen is that ma'dhun is going to be considered to be someone who is now liable to be sold off to pay off those debts, right? That's the kind of case. And the ma'dhun is an important masla to learn. That sometimes people think, why am I studying chapters with regards to slaves when slaves were in the past and they have no slaves today. But the thing is, what we have to remember is the slave masail are very important in today's times, because there's lots of principles that apply in the ruling of slaves that can be extracted and applied to today's times when it comes to certain businesses. For example, like this was something once Mufti Rafi Uthmani rahimahullah. This was something I heard from one of his students. He mentioned there was a discussion about limited companies. How do we understand limited companies in today's time? So a limited company in the UK is basically a company that is not liable. Yeah, the limited liabilities there. So basically, let's say for example, I open a limited company. That company is its own entity. So the money that I make in the business that goes towards a limited company, it's like no one owns it. And if my business, if I was to, for example, do something wrong and I was being sued, the company would be sued, but the company can actually, it's limited to how much you can sue the company. You can only sue the company for the amount of money that it has. You can't sue me, even though I'm the CEO of the company. So this is where the limited liability company is quite problematic from many fiqh points. So the question was asked, what is the status of a limited liability company in Hanafi fiqh? So Mufti Rafi said he treats it like an abd ma'dhun, because an abd ma'dhun is someone who does not own anything himself. Yeah, and the master doesn't really own what the abd ma'dhun has earned. So therefore, whatever the abd ma'dhun has earned so far. So let's say I have a slave, on the 1st of January I sent him to become a taxi driver, and he's going to become a taxi driver, and now he's earning money. Yeah. Or for example, let's say I told him to buy and sell houses, and he's gone on 1st of January. He's bought and sold houses. Now on the 31st of December, the amount of money that he has made and everything that he has, all the houses that he's bought or cars that he's purchased, whatever he's bought, all of that, whose is it? Who does it belong to? So again, all of this it's in thin air. He doesn't own it. I technically don't own it. So this is why this is considered, the Abd Ma'dhun Masla is very important for trying to understand how we deal with the limited liability company of today. Right? So there is precedence for this in Hanafi fiqh, basically. So, وَلَوْ مَرَّ عَبْدٌ, does everyone understand what I just said there? Does it make sense? Yeah, so this is why, like I said, these chapters are very important, because when you become very familiar with Hanafi fiqh and you read it a lot, you go through the books, there's going to be in between the lines, you're going to see principles and rules that pop out to you. And then you might see a concept that appears in modern day, 2022. And you're going to think to yourself, okay, how would I find an example for this in our fiqh? How would we find some sort of a mas'ala for this? Yeah, like for example, how would we find an example for organ transplantation in today's times? Or how would we find an example for, let's say, someone who wants to have, Botox injections for beauty purposes, yeah, in their lips or in their cheeks or other parts of their body? How would we find an example for this in Hanafi fiqh? All this requires studying the fiqh carefully. You might find an example for, let's say, Botox in a chapter related to fasting, or in a chapter related to, buyu or something that you might think that is totally random, but it's got a principle there, and that principle can be applied in these kind of scenarios. Okay, anyway, so it says وَلَوْ مَرَّ عَبْدٌ مَأْذُونٌ لَهُ. So if a abdun ma'dhun, a permitted slave, permitted meaning in brackets, permitted to buy and sell, a slave that's permitted to buy and sell, lahu بِمِئَتَيْ dirhamin. And so this slave, let's call him Zaid, he comes to the border control, which is me, and he says to the border control, okay, I've got 200 dirhams, but this 200 dirhams is because I'm an abd ma'dhun and I've been doing business, and this is the money that's been collected so far. لَيْسَ عَلَيْهِ دَيْنٌ, and he doesn't have any debt. Asharahu, the Ashir will take money off him. Yeah, the Ashir is going to take the 2.5% off him. So see how we understand the difference between mudaraba and between this masala. Yeah, there's a subtle difference between the two, and that's what gives a person deep fiqh. If you want deep fiqh, one of the ways of being identified if someone has deep fiqh is they can see 2 or 3 masalas, and they can see the difference between each one. Once you're able to do that, then your level of fiqh, I would say, is very, very good. It's very, very deep. You have the ability to be able to, look at what they call ashbah wa nadha'ir, and sort of like sieve through them. So he says this masala is different from the mudarib one. In the mudarib one, the mudarib ushur is not taken from the mudarib. In this masala, ushur is taken from the abd ma'dhun, so long as he doesn't have a debt. Now, why is it that I'm going to come back to the reason why he doesn't have a debt? It's an important point there. قال أبو يوسف, Imam Abu Yusuf says, لا أدري أن أبا حنيفة رجع عن هذا أم لا. So he says, I'm not sure if Abu Yusuf says, I'm not 100% sure if Abu Hanifa retracted this position. Like he might have, like he did with the mudarib one. Maybe he originally said, like the mudarib, like he said the mudarib has to give the ushur. And over here he also said the abd ma'dhun must also give the ushur as well. I'm not sure if he left this opinion. Can't be 100% sure. So this shows us the honesty of the fuqaha. The fuqaha were honest people. When they were reporting anything from their teachers, they would report it as it was. Like they wouldn't, exaggerate something of their teachers, or they wouldn't distort what the teacher said. They said it exactly as it was. So he said, I can't remember. لا أدري أن أبا حنيفة رجع عن هذا أم لا. I'm not too sure. وقياس قوله الثاني في المضاربة وهو قولهم أنه لا يعشره. So he said, however, if you were to do the qiyas, meaning if you were to do takhrij of his qawl, if you remember I told you this before, sometimes what tends to happen is Imam Abu Hanifa might say something, and then let's say for example he said something with regards to A. Yeah, he said something with regards to A. Let's call A for example. He said something with regards to doing wudu with a ring on, that you can't do wudu with a ring on, you must move the ring or get the water inside of it, right? That's his position. Then we want to ask the question, okay, what would he have said with regards to nail varnish? What would he have said with regards to nail varnish on fingernails? So then we would say he hasn't said anything about nail varnish, but because he said something about the ring, we can do takhrij, you can do almost like you can say a mini qiyas, and say if he said this about the ring, then he would have also said this about the nail varnish. For example, this is just an example. I'm not saying this is exactly what he said, but so this is called a takhrij. This is. So sometimes what happens is a scholar might say a particular thing, and you have the right to take their takhrij. Their takhrij sometimes is actually stronger than what another Hanafi might say. How do you learn the takhrij of a scholar? Again, this requires reading the Hanafi works, like reading every position of Abu Hanifa, and then carefully analyzing it of what the fuqaha have said and the arguments that they brought. And then you start to understand what would he have said. If this is what he said about A, then you would know what he would have said about B then. So this is the similar thing over here. If we were to look at a qiyas of his second qawl in mudaraba, remember the first qawl of mudaraba was you take an ushur. Second qawl of mudaraba is that you don't take ushur. So if you were to take his second qawl in mudaraba and do qiyas of that onto the abd ma'dhoon, the answer would be like what the Sahibain say, that you don't give ushur, that the abd ma'dhoon does not give ushur. Okay, this is what he's saying. وَقِيَاسُ قَوْلِهِ الثَّانِي, and the qiyas of his second opinion in the mas'ala of mudaraba, which is also the position of the Sahibain, أَنَّهُ لَا يُعَشِّرُهُ, that he won't give the ushur, or لَا يَعْشُرُهُ you can say. He won't give ushur, he won't take the ushur. Why is this? لأن الملك فيما في يده للمولى, because ultimately whatever the abd ma'dhoon has is really for the mawla, even though the mawla technically doesn't have a say. So it belongs to the mawla, just like in mudaraba. Zafar was doing all that business and buying and selling, so it really belongs to the investors really. So he's saying لأن الملك فيما في يده, because the ownership which is in his hands truly belongs to the mawla. وَلَهُ التَّصَرُّفْ, but the abd has the power to do tasarruf. فَصَارَ كَالْمُضَارِبِ, then he becomes like a mudarib. So in other words, if you had to look at these two masalas and really think about them, what are the differences between an abd ma'dhoon masala and a mudarib masala? He says they're almost the same in what we're trying to understand here, because they both don't have full control of the mal, and they're both really working for someone else. So it's a very similar situation over here. And that's why I said to you, again, if you want to understand like deep fiqh, deep understanding, you need to understand also similarities between two masalas and differences. What are the similarities between these two things and what are the differences? Like for example, let's say someone says, imagine someone wants to drink very strong coffee. Is strong coffee considered to be something which is prohibited to drink like wine is? Because strong coffee can make you feel dizzy or it can make you addicted to it. Can we say there's a resemblance between addiction to coffee and between addiction to, let's say, wine or something like that? Is there a resemblance? So this is why we need to know the differences between the two. To what extent is there going to be a difference? Yeah. Or for example, like, drinking like having alcohol. Sometimes you read some food ingredients and you find in there, this has got 1% alcohol in there. Yeah. Or 0.5% alcohol in there. And between something that actually like a food that's made by adding some alcohol into it, is there a difference between the two, or is there a similarity? That's the fine sort of points. And one thing I tell my students to do is also when you get yourself a notebook and make yourself masail. So for example, like write yourself masail and then try to write another column where you look for masail that are similar and different to that one. Yeah. So if you get like for example, what's the difference between a woman having a ring on her finger and doing wudu and having to remove it or move it, and between a woman, for example, like having lipstick on? Can she do wudu with lipstick on? Would lipstick be considered to be a similar form of a barrier as a ring is? Or for example, she's got, I don't know, some foundation on her face, or she's got some eyeliner on, or anything else for that matter. Would it have to be the same kind of rule as well? So once you collect these, slowly over time, you train your mind into being able to see the like subtle differences between these masalas. They both don't have full control of the mal, and are they working for and are they working for another person? Is that two similarities? Yeah, that would be two similarities. So that's what they're trying. Imam Sahib al-Hidayah is trying to say. He's basically trying to say that look, this is why, based on the qiyas of Abu Hanifa on the mudaraba, we would have expected Abu Hanifa to have come out with the same answer for the abd ma'dhoon. Then he says, وَقِيلَ فِي الْفَرْقِ بَيْنَهُمَا, and some have said, no, why are you saying that Abu Hanifa should hold this position? Why are you saying that Abu Hanifa should hold the same position as his new position in the mudaraba one? There is no reason to. These two masalas are different. So he said, وَقِيلَ, and he said that the difference between the two is إِنَّ الْعَبْدَ يَتَصَرَّفْ لِنَفْسِهِ حَتَّى لَا يَرْجِعْ بِالْأُهْدَةِ عَلَى الْمَوْلَى. So he's saying that, look, there's a difference between the two masalas, mudarib masala and abd ma'dhoon. What's that difference? He says the abd yatasarraf has total control لنفسه, for himself, in buying and selling, to such an extent حتى لا يرجع بالأهدة على المولى, that the responsibilities of any transactions he's made, the people that have the clients, the buyers and the sellers to the slave, cannot come to the owner and say to the owner, where's our money? So let's say I have a slave. My slave on the 1st of January has gone out of business. And on the 31st of January now, people have come to me and said, look, your slave sold us stuff and it's faulty. Or your slave sold us things and he owes us money. Or we sold him things and he owes us money. That's called the uhda, the responsibility. That responsibility will not legally come to me. I'm going to say, well, he's an abd ma'dhoon. Go and deal with it yourselves with him. It's between you and him. It's not between me. So he said, حتى لا يرجع بالأهدة على المولى. Yeah, that's one of the key differences they're saying between the abd ma'dhoon and between the mudarib masala. فكان هو المحتاج إلى حماية. That's why he, the abd ma'dhoon, is going to be in need of himaya, protection from the border control. Yeah, the Ashir. The Ashir is the one that's going to protect him, not me, not the owner. والمضارب يتصرف بحكم النيابة. And the mudarib, on the other hand, he does dealings, but بحكم النيابة. He does it in accordance with the ruling of niyaba, meaning he is the naib. Zafar is my naib. He is my representative in regards to buying and selling, not in regards to zakat. يتصرف بحكم النيابة حتى so much so يرجع بالأهدة على رب المال. Yeah, so he can actually come back to me, Zafar can come back to me with regard to responsibility of the mal. For example, if the business doesn't do well, or there's debts and other things have been incurred, they can come back to me and get that from me. So that's why there's a difference between the two in that sense. فكان رب المال هو المحتاج. That's why رب المال is the one who is really the muhtaj of himaya. So it makes sense that the border control, the Ashir, is not going to ask Zafar for the money. He's the mudarib. He should ask me if I was passing through. So because I'm not passing through, he's not going to ask. فلا يكون الرجوع في المضارب رجوعا منه في العبد. So therefore, ruju in the mudarib case is not going to be considered like ruju in the abd case. Right? They're two different things. Yeah. Okay. Finally, وإن كان مولاه معه يؤخذ منه. However, if I had a slave Zayd, and this slave has been doing business, and he's got his mal, and he's going past the border control, and I'm with him as well on that journey, me and him are together. Now what's going to happen now? In that case, the border control will take the ushur from him. Yeah, وإن كان معه مولاه يؤخذ منه. Yeah, if the mawla is with him, then obviously money will be taken. لأن الملك له, because the milk is for him. Even the Sahibain say this. This is what the Sahibain say. They say the milk belongs to him. Mal will be taken. But Abu Hanifa says even if the mawla wasn't with him, then the mal will be taken. Why is this? لأن الملك له, because the milk is for him. Sahibain say إلا إذا كان على العبد دين يحيط بماله. This was the masala I told you about, the debt. Why does it say in the Jami' al-Saghir text that there has to be that he doesn't have a debt? If he has a debt, dain, right? So let's say I have a slave on the 1st of January. He's gone and started all these businesses, buying and selling, and he's incurred a big debt. And this debt is so big, it's muhit. Muhit means it's more than the value of the slave, or it's more than the amount of money he has. So let's say the amount of money he has is, he comes to the border, he's got 1,000 silver coins worth of mal. Yeah. But the debt he has is 2,000. So if he has a debt which is more than the amount of mal that he has in his hands when he's crossing the border, he goes, in that case, the Ashir will not take a penny of him. Yeah. Why is this for? لإنعدام الملك أو للشغل. لإنعدام الملك, either because there's no ownership, because if he has a debt, if you minus what he owns, 1,000 from 2,000, he's in the minus. Yeah, so 1,000 minus 2,000 is minus 1,000, so he's in the minus, so he doesn't have ownership. أو للشغل. أو للشغل basically means the mal is considered to be preoccupied. Yeah, preoccupied means that it's considered to be preoccupied with debt. Yeah, so either we consider him not to have ownership, or shaghal with the fatha. Shaghal means like the mal is preoccupied with something else, and that other thing is debt, that overpowering debt. Okay, so what's the khulasa of this masala? Khulasa of this masala is, if you have an abd ma'dhoon, does the abd ma'dhoon have to give the ushur when he crosses the border? Abu Hanifa rahimahullah seems to say yes, he does. And Abu Yusuf rahimahullah says, we don't know if Abu Hanifa actually retracted this position, because it's very likely that he did retract it, but it didn't reach us. Because if you look at the qiyas of the Mudaraba one, it seems as though the Abd Ma'dun should not have to give a penny, simply because the Abd Ma'dun is considered to be a non-owner. He's not really the true owner of it. Yeah, the true owner is the seller. However, Imam Sahib Hidayah says that some of the Hanafis have argued that there is a difference between the two. You don't have to say Abu Hanifa's position on this should be the Mudarib one. Why? Because in the Mudarib case, the Mudarib is a naib on behalf, is a representative on behalf of the investors, and the Abd is considered to be like his own tasarruf. He has his own power to be able to do whatever he wants, and the master has no say in this. So that's the difference between the two. Anyway, last masala. ومن مر على عاشر الخوارج في أرض قد غلبوا عليها فعشره يثنى عليه صدقة. So unfortunately, what tends to happen sometimes in Muslim countries is there might be, for instance, let's say there's an area of the Muslim lands. So let's say, for example, this is north, this is south, this is east, and this is west. So let's say the west has been overtaken by rebels, the Khawarij. Khawarij is those who have left the order, the order of obedience to the government. So they left this order and they've created their own like area. And anyone that goes past their checkpoints, they do the same thing. Yeah, they do, ta'ashir of them. So let's say a Muslim goes down that area in the west, and they were to get the checkpoints and give the money there. And then later on, a few months later, they went through the normal and the government-owned checkpoints. The government-owned checkpoints, now if they say, well, we gave it in the west to the Khawarij, the government's going to say, so? You shouldn't have gone there. It was your fault for going there. You knew that these people are the Khawarij and you gave them the wealth. It's your fault, so you've made a mistake in giving them. Therefore, you still have to give us. So he has to pay a second time now. Man marra ala ashir al-Khawarij, whoever passes by a checkpoint of the Khawarij, fi ardin, in a land, qad ghalabu alayha, where the Khawarij have taken dominance power there. Fa'asharahu, and the person was to give their ushar to the yuthanna alayhi sadaqah. Sadaqah would have to be double. Yuthanna is from the word muthanna, like doubled. It'd have to be doubled again, repeated, if they were to go by a government-owned checkpoint. Ma'nahu idha marra ala ashri ahl adl. This is when they pass by the ashir of ahl adl. Ahl adl means the people of justice, i.e. the government. Why is this? Why does he have to give it a second time? لأن التقصير, because the shortcoming جاء من قبله, came on behalf of the Muslim that went by. That was his fault. He should have known that. من حيث إنه مر عليهم, such that he was the one, that Muslim businessman, he was the one that went past them, and that's his fault. Now, the other Hanafi works, they say, if a person was like forced to give him money, he didn't want to give it, but he was forced to, and he can prove that, then they won't take it off him a second time. Yeah, it won't be taken off a second time. Or for example, like he didn't know that they were Khawarij, like they didn't take over that place. Then again, it wouldn't be his fault, so he wouldn't have to give. Yeah, so the point is, the idea is, once you give the ushur once, your turn won't come again until another year. If you pass by that point, you can go past that checkpoint as many times as you like. They won't take it off you again until 12 months later. Okay, and that's it. Okay, so alhamdulillah, we reached up to Babul Ma'adin and Rikaz. Alhamdulillah. So next lesson is going to be Ma'adin and Rikaz. So if you've got any questions, put in the comments. Let's just summarize what we covered today. Okay, so today's masala, we talked about the child and we talked about the lady of Bani Taghlib. Do they have to give ushur if they pass? And we said no, the child doesn't, because in zakat rules, the child doesn't pay. And as for a woman, she has to pay in zakat rules. So therefore, even if she's from the tribe of Bani Taghlib, she still has to give it. And what about when it comes to a person who doesn't have all of the nisab on him? He has half on him, 100 silver coins on him, 100 silver coins at home. Does he have to give zakat if does he have to give the ushur if he passes by a checkpoint? So the answer is no, he doesn't have to. Why is this? Because the amount that he has is only the amount which is going to be for himaya. And because it doesn't come under the nisab, it doesn't fall according to nisab, he doesn't have to give it. As for what's in his house, himaya doesn't apply to that. Protection doesn't apply to that. Okay, what if he came by the checkpoint and he was basically an employee for an employer and he's got all the money? Then he wouldn't be considered to be liable to give ushur. What if he's a mudarib in a silent partnership, then in that case, Abu Hanifa had two opinions. The first opinion was he has to give it. Second opinion that he retracted and said no, he doesn't have to give it. Right. The first opinion he held was because he believed the mudarib had the same strength as the silent partner. Yeah. But then he retracted this position and went to the Sahibain's position. Now, there's actually, like, you should collect these retraction points, by the way. Right, you should collect them, make a note of them, because these are very important later on to understand what opinions Abu Hanifa later on left. And if I remember, I'll try to put on the group. There's a book, if someone reminds me in the week, of someone that's collected a lot of the retracted points Abu Hanifa's holds. And the other position, Sahibain's position, is he is a naib of the investors when it comes to buying and selling, but he's not a naib in giving zakat. So he doesn't have that right to give zakat. If, however, the amount of money that the mudarib, in this case Zafar, comes to the checkpoint and he has profited, then according to his profit, we look at how much he has. If his profit falls in the nisab, then yes, he gives zakat at that much. Okay, what about a ma'dhun slave? So some have said the ma'dhun slave, like in the Zahir Riwayah, seems to say that he has to give ushur. Abu Yusuf seems to say, I don't know if he should or not. I don't know what Abu Hanifa said. And the qiyas of Abu Hanifa's qawl should be on the mudarib one, which is that he shouldn't give it because he's very similar to the mudarib case. However, some have differentiated between the two and said, no, the mudarib case is different from that because the mudarib is simply considered a naib and the abd is considered to be someone who's doing work for himself. And then finally, we just said if you pass by the Khawarij and you're given your ushur, then you have to repeat it again if you pass by the people of the government. Okay, Jazakallah khair, guys. Inshallah, I'll see you guys next lesson. Take care, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.